Our story this morning is in all three synoptic gospels. The synoptic gospels referring to Matthew, Mark, and Luke because they include many of the same stories, often in a similar sequence or similar or identical wording. They stand in contrast to John. But this version in Luke is drastically different than in the other two gospels. While Matthew and Mark share a very simple story about calling Simon and the brothers, Luke's version goes into great detail. It's so much detail that it's kind of absurd. It's ridiculous when you really break it down. Simon Peter is a fisherman. He is a businessman actually in the business of fishing, which is incredibly hard work. And after an entire night of hard work with James and John, they have caught nothing. And while cleaning their nets, Jesus comes up and asks if he could borrow their boat to use it as a pulpit of sorts to keep the crowd at a distance. And he sits down and begins to teach. Now, I want to pause right here because, as a planner with introverted tendencies, I have some deep compassion for Simon and the boys. I'm going to practice some good old fashioned projecting and assume that Simon is tired. Work was terrible and he's had a bad day. He doesn't want to grab a drink after work. He has likely planned out his evening, perhaps a nap and a light dinner and maybe some Netflix. And he just wants to clean his nets and go home. He's already said yes to Jesus borrowing his boat for a bit to preach. And now, after his sermon, Jesus says, "Hey guys, thanks for letting me use your boat. Let's go out into deeper waters and catch some fish." We might imagine what Simon was thinking. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and you have no idea what you're doing, Jesus. Now, maybe it's Simon's Southern upbringing, or his Yankee resiliency, or Midwestern niceties, but he digs a little deeper and musters up a bless your heart smile and tells Jesus, "Sure, if you say so." And they go out into deeper waters. And what happens? After a fishless night, Jesus helps the men catch so many fish the nets start to break. We are supposed to see the comic relief of sorts in this story. The mysterious Jesus, who isn't a fisherman, broke all the fishing rules and catches a lot of fish. And if that isn't absurd enough, they catch all these fish and then they leave the fish on the side of the lake to follow Jesus. This story is often preached as a call story, how Jesus invites the first disciples to follow him and how we should do likewise. This story is often preached as a miracle story, how a life of following Jesus, obeying Jesus, will result in our nets being full. And we should do likewise. I have preached this gospel story with both of those meanings in mind. But this week, the meaning that emerges is a little different. This week, I hear a story about joy. I hear a story about a man who opens himself up to the inconvenient values of Jesus and unexpectedly experiences joy. This week, I read about a man who has lost his passion for fishing. The business of fishing has taken over and it's no longer fun, and he's burned out. It's hard work and it takes a toll on your body, and you have to get up really early day after day. And now it's all about the numbers. How many fish did you catch? How many can you sell? How many employees are depending upon you? It's now all about the expense of nets and boats and keeping up with it all. And now fishing has just lost its joy. And here comes Jesus, inviting a man who is exhausted and has lost his joy to come hang out on a boat, not to focus on fishing so much, but to just be present, to be present in the moment with his friends and with Jesus, not worrying about catching fish, but about catching joy, about rediscovering meaning and finding joy, catching life and living fully. Jesus shows Simon joy. And what a good news reminder that is. When we live in a world where we feel the need to constantly push ourselves to strive and achieve, when we are taught that nothing in life comes easy and we must fight really hard to make it in the world, and so we assume that success must always be an upstream effort against the current, trying and striving and pushing. We encounter a story where Jesus calls us back. When we are told that happiness will come when we are successful, when we get straight A's or when we lose the weight, when we get that promotion, when we have the big house and nice car, then we will find joy. We hear a story where Jesus calls us back. When the conversation inside our brain is filled with crippling self doubt, I'm not good enough. I'm tired. I'm a failure. Perhaps not unlike Chesley Christ, a Miss USA winner and successful attorney who took her own life this week after years of struggling with depression. Friends, after 3 years of living in and with and under a pandemic, no doubt we have all struggled with such realities. And Jesus calls us back to what matters and what is valuable. Now, obviously, we must work. We must engage in effort in our life. But how can we be productive without destroying our health and well being? I think this story invites us to consider not living life constantly as an upstream effort, but embracing a downstream effort. Still trying, still rowing the boat, but going with the current, the flow of life. A current that values authenticity, a flow of life that respects stability, a movement that embraces joy, a current that thrives on breath. In Lectionary Lab last week, Alex Slusher shared a story about shifting from what could have been an upstream effort to a downstream effort. She shared about the time a group of 7th Streeters went to South Africa for a mission trip, working with a school. Soon after they arrived, the principal walked up to the group and asked, "Who is the artist? Who is the artist?" And I can imagine everyone just turning their heads toward Alex as if to say, "Not it." Alex was asked to paint a mural on a large outdoor wall. Alex had no paint, no ideas, and less than 3 days to complete the task. No doubt Alex felt this project was moving against the current. I can imagine she felt overwhelmed and anxious and stressed. This trip to South Africa was suddenly deprived of joy. And she pressed on. Her first step was to pray the very honest prayer, "Dear God, I have no idea what to do. Please help." And a bright idea did come to her in the middle of the night. Instead of navigating this project upstream on her own, she called the community to help. She enlisted John Barnes to go pick up some paint, and in a downstream effort, together she invited the community to help paint a mural of a garden. And all the kids came and helped by sharing their handprints as flowers. Everyone participated in the experience. And the event moved Alex, who was struggling and still healing from the loss of her own son who passed away by suicide, back among the living. In our story, we get a glimpse of what Jesus values. Jesus values a sense of humor as he entices Simon Peter to go fishing after a long night, and simplicity and presence of just doing something enjoyable, like being on a boat. Jesus seems to value community, as no one is alone, and abundance, as they catch so many fish. And most of all, Jesus seems to value being fully alive in this one precious life. This is maybe what Simon Peter experiences. That to follow Jesus is to reorient oneself to life. Simon makes a courageous move to break away from what the world has told him, that he's not good enough or working hard enough, that he's caught nothing. And in an inconvenient moment, he listens to Jesus and experiences joy. And he chooses, alongside James and John, to reorient his life to the values of Jesus. Simon drops his nets and follows him. Now, Jesus doesn't say in this text, "Follow me." Instead, he says, "Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people." Literally, Jesus says, "You will be catching alive people." Friends, as we continue to navigate hard things like health issues or moving and downsizing, oscillating from virtual to in-person work and school, divided political climate, depression and broken relationships, and even our church building, let us remember in these tough times to value what Jesus values. Let us be affirmed that if Jesus is restoring others to life and strength, it must be that we will be filled with life too. So, in all that we do in our daily lives, in all that we currently do and pray to do and have vision to do here at 7th Street Christian Church, let us remember the one whose life calls and inspires the work that we are called to. The inviting Jesus, the captivating Jesus, the one who wants to heal our broken hearts and bind up our wounds, who is longing to welcome us to his table, who is ready right now to restore our sight and release us from captivity and teach us to walk and restore us to new and joy-filled life. And so we do it. We drop our nets and we follow. Thanks be to God.